I watched the video, unable to look away as she kissed him, their bodies pressed together in a way that felt wrong, too familiar. Then, in the next frame, they were undressing, moving as if they had done this 1,000 times before. It all started so damn perfect. I met her 5 years ago, and we clicked right away. Emily. She was stunning, blonde, tall, beautiful curves, everything I could ever want in a woman. We fell in love quickly, and I thought I'd hit the jackpot. We got married after a little over a year. Everything was smooth sailing, or at least I thought it was. We had our little apartment, a cat named Tom that was more like a family member than just a pet, and everything was looking good. Emily worked at a corporate job in a big company, making good money. I was just a regular guy, but I loved her. And she loved me. Or so I thought. The first red flag didn't even come until months later. The little things, you know? She'd get home late sometimes, but she'd always have an excuse. "Work's been crazy," she'd say. I didn't think much of it. I trusted her. After all, she was the love of my life, and we had built a life together. I didn't need to question it. Her boss, Jack, was always mentioned casually when she talked about work. I never thought twice about him either. He was older, but he seemed to be the kind of guy who just worked hard, no different from anyone else in the office. But there were times when she would say things like, "Jack wants me to take on this new project." Or, "Jack was so impressed with the report I submitted." She'd say it with a little smile, like it was a good thing. I didn't catch on at the time, but looking back, it feels like she was trying to keep me distracted from something. For a while, everything seemed great though. We'd come home, have dinner, relax. It wasn't anything extraordinary, but it was enough for me. We'd have sex when we could, and honestly, things were fine. There wasn't anything that screamed problem, until one night, about a year into our marriage. That night, everything felt normal. We were close, the way couples can be when the world outside is quiet and you're just with each other. The lights were dim, the room was warm, and the tension between us had built up over the past few days. We were both craving the release, the intimacy we usually shared. It was passionate, the kind of sex where it feels like you're reconnecting after a long day, where everything else falls away. We moved together in a rhythm we knew well. She was into it, I could tell. Her body was responsive, her breath quickening in all the right ways. I was lost in her, in how soft her skin was and how she fit perfectly against me. Her eyes closed, her hands gripping my shoulders, as we fell into the moment. But then, right in the middle of it, just as everything reached its peak, she moaned. And it wasn't my name. "Ooh, Jack," she whispered breathlessly. It hit me like a cold splash of water. My mind froze for a second, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I thought maybe she was just caught up in the moment, that she was saying something without thinking. After all, it happens. But the name she spoke, "Jack," rang in my ears like an echo I couldn't shake. I didn't say anything. I just kept going, not wanting to disrupt the moment, not wanting to make something out of nothing. But I could feel a small knot in my stomach forming. I brushed it off, just like I had before. But a part of me, deep down, started to wonder. But that's when I look back now and realize I was an idiot for letting it go. I should have questioned it. I should have asked her why she said his name. But instead, I did what any trusting husband would do, I let it slide. In the weeks that followed, I noticed more changes. She seemed happier. Her attitude at work was more positive, like she was on top of the world. She started coming home a bit later, and I never thought much of it. Maybe she was working harder, maybe they were working on a big project. But she was getting more money, which made me happy. I mean, what guy wouldn't be happy that his wife was successful at work, right? One evening, after a long day, she came home, excited. She had been promoted. I remember her face. Her eyes were sparkling, and she had this glowing look to her. She told me about the big bonus she'd earned, and I was ecstatic for her. We celebrated that night. I felt proud of her. My wife, the successful businesswoman. But somewhere deep inside, I had this nagging feeling, like I should have been paying more attention. I didn't want to be paranoid, but after hearing her mention Jack's name again a few times, I couldn't ignore it. Still, I didn't say anything. I figured I was overthinking it. I didn't want to ruin what we had. Then came the day she got fired. It was completely out of the blue. I came home to find her sitting on the couch, looking defeated. She'd lost her job, just like that. And no, it wasn't because of anything she'd done, at least that's what she said. Apparently, the company had to downsize, and her position was eliminated. She was upset, but she was also relieved. It didn't make sense at the time, but I took her word for it. She was upset about the income, of course. We had bills to pay, and now, with her being out of a job, it was going to be tight. But I reassured her that it was going to be fine. I told her I could pick up the slack, and we'd get through it. We had Tom, our cat, who was always there to comfort us during stressful times. The next few weeks were a blur. Emily was suddenly free to do whatever she wanted. She spent more time at home, and I tried to adjust to the new dynamic. It wasn't ideal, but we had to make it work. She started spending more time with friends, or at least that's what she told me. But it didn't feel right. She was being more distant, a little more cold. I could feel a change in her, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I should have paid more attention. But at the time, I was just a guy, trying to make the best of the situation. I loved my wife. I trusted her. And yet, I had a sinking feeling that things weren't as they seemed. Little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down in the worst way imaginable. The signs were there, but I couldn't see it yet. I never thought I would have to question the one person I trusted the most. But soon, I'd see things that would make me question everything. For a few weeks after that night, I tried to put what had happened behind me. It was one of those moments where doubt crept in, but I pushed it down. I told myself it was a slip-up, just an accident in the heat of the moment. After all, Emily had always been loving and affectionate, and we'd had good times together before. Surely, this was nothing. But things started to feel different. Not in an obvious way at first. It was subtle. She'd come home later than usual, sometimes even after I'd already started dinner. She'd tell me about the office, the big meetings she'd had, how everyone had been praising her work, especially Jack. It was like she was trying to make it clear how much he appreciated her. At first, I didn't think much of it. But then, she started talking about him more, about how he was impressed with her reports, how he always wanted her to take on more responsibilities. I wanted to be supportive. She was doing well at work, after all. I couldn't fault her for that. But deep down, I felt this unease. It was that same feeling I had gotten when she'd whispered Jack's name during sex. Something wasn't adding up. Then came the promotion. The one she had mentioned to me that evening, that made her glow with pride. She'd been promoted to a higher position, and with it came a bigger paycheck, a bonus, and more opportunities. I should have been happy for her, and I was, to some extent. I wanted her to succeed, to be happy. But there was something in her eyes that made me uneasy. She was glowing, sure, but there was something off. It wasn't just the success, it felt like there was a shift in her. The change in Emily wasn't just about work, either. At home, she seemed more distant. We still had dinner together, but it felt more like a routine than something we genuinely enjoyed. She would zone out in front of the TV or on her phone, not really engaging with me. I tried to talk to her about how she was feeling, but her responses were always vague, as if she didn't want to share anything real. I felt like she was slipping away from me. It all came to a head one evening when I got home early from work. I had a few hours to kill before she was due home, so I decided to do a little cleaning around the apartment. As I was wiping down the counter in the kitchen, I noticed something strange, a piece of paper tucked under the edge of the table. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe it was something she had left behind. But then I saw what it was, an invitation to a corporate dinner. It was for employees and their significant others, but what stood out to me wasn't just the event, it was the handwriting on the note. It was in Emily's handwriting, but there was a note at the bottom in a different, unfamiliar hand. "Looking forward to seeing you there, Jack." I stared at it for a few moments, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This was the first time I had seen anything like this. It wasn't just a casual mention of Jack. It was personal. She had written this invitation, but she had also been in contact with him in a way that felt off. I felt this tight knot in my chest as I stood there, my mind racing. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces seemed to fall into place. The late nights at work, her sudden promotion, the way she talked about Jack, it all started to feel like more than just coincidence. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was nothing. But then, there was the nagging feeling that I couldn't shake, the feeling that I was being kept in the dark. I didn't confront her about it. Not yet. Instead, I kept quiet, letting the unease fester. I wanted to be sure. I couldn't accuse her of something without knowing for sure. The next few days, I watched her closely. I didn't say anything about the invitation. I wanted to see how she acted. She was still distant, but nothing overtly suspicious happened. Until one evening, when I came home early again. This time, I decided to take a different approach. I pretended like I hadn't seen the invitation and just casually asked her about the dinner. "Oh, yeah," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "It's a corporate thing. Jack invited me, and he really wants to see me there." I could tell there was something she wasn't telling me. The way she said it wasn't normal. She seemed too casual about it. It wasn't like the Emily I knew, the one who would always talk to me about everything. Something had changed. I could feel the distance between us widening. She didn't see it, but I did. And it was starting to hurt. Then, one night, everything changed. I was sitting on the couch, zoning out in front of the TV when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I opened it without thinking much. To my surprise, standing there was a man I recognized, a friend of mine, Paul. He was a tech guy, a hacker. A bit of a wild card, but I trusted him. He had been helping me with some online stuff in the past, and I'd known him for years. "Hey, man," Paul said, his voice low and serious. "I need to talk to you. Something's going on." I let him in, trying to figure out what this was about. He sat down, looking around as if he were trying to make sure no one was listening. "I've been keeping an eye on something for you," he said, finally meeting my gaze. "I know you've had a feeling about Emily, and I've been looking into her, and Jack." My heart sank. The night dragged on as I sat in the living room, my mind spinning. I couldn't focus on anything, TV, music, or even the cat, Tom, who was curled up beside me, purring peacefully. It all felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life, not my own. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, was out there with Jack. The man who had been pulling her away from me for months, and I had done nothing but ignore the signs. The silence was deafening. But my phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Paul. I grabbed the phone, barely able to keep my hands from shaking. "It's done," Paul's message read. "I've got video. It's exactly what you think." My heart dropped, but I wasn't surprised. I knew it deep down. Still, seeing the words confirmed what I had feared. I sat there, staring at my phone for a few moments, unable to process it. My mind was numb, but I knew I had to act. I couldn't let this slide. Not anymore. I clicked open the video. It was a few seconds of shaky footage, but I could make out Emily clearly. She was standing next to Jack, laughing at something he had said. They were outside of a bar, and from the way they were looking at each other, it was clear this was more than just a work relationship. She leaned in close to him, her hand resting on his arm as she whispered something in his ear. It didn't look like a simple conversation between colleagues, it looked intimate. The video played on, each moment feeling heavier than the last. Emily and Jack were still on the bed, but now they were closer than ever. She was sitting on top of him, her body leaning into his as he held her in his arms. There was no mistaking what was happening between them now. It was like everything I had ever known about her, everything I had believed in, was slipping away. Her movements were slow, deliberate. I could see the way her body shifted against his, the way she seemed to be responding to him in a way that she had never responded to me. There was no hesitance, no uncertainty. She was lost in the moment, her eyes closed, her lips parted slightly as she moved, her body pressed tightly against his. I couldn't tear my eyes away, even though every part of me wanted to. Watching them like this, watching her so effortlessly give herself to him, felt like a betrayal I could feel in my bones. I had always believed that our connection, the intimacy we shared, was something that couldn't be replaced. But now, here she was, doing things with him that she had never done with me, not this freely, not with this level of comfort. The camera captured it all. The way Jack's hands held her waist, guiding her movements, the way Emily's body responded as if it had been waiting for this. It was like she was in a trance, completely absorbed in the moment. She was no longer the woman I had married. She had become someone else, someone I didn't recognize. And the worst part? She didn't seem to care that I was watching. She didn't seem to care that she was betraying me, that she was sharing something with him that was once ours. I could feel the anger rising in me, but it was quickly overtaken by a deep, gut-wrenching sorrow. How had this happened? How had she fallen into this? I stopped the video, my chest tightening. I could feel the rage building up, but I also felt something else, something worse. It was that familiar feeling of betrayal, but now, it was crushing me. She had been hiding this from me for so long, lying to my face, pretending everything was fine. And I had let her. I couldn't stay here. I had to confront her. I needed to see it with my own eyes. When Emily came home later that night, I was waiting for her. She walked in, a little tipsy from the drinks, smiling as she kicked off her shoes. "Hey, babe," she said, a little too cheerfully. She didn't seem to notice the tension in the air. "How was your evening?" I didn't answer at first. I just stood there, staring at her, trying to process the reality of what had happened. She looked at me, frowning slightly. "What's wrong?" she asked, tilting her head. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure, but it was hard. Everything I'd learned was crashing down on me, and I was too angry to pretend anymore. "Where were you tonight, Emily?" I asked, my voice low and steady. She hesitated, and I could see the flicker of nervousness in her eyes. "I told you. I was with Jack and some of the team." I wasn't buying it. "Not anymore." "I know about you and Jack," I said, watching her carefully. "I know everything." Her eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing as if she were searching for the right words. But nothing came out. She knew she was caught. "How long, Emily?" I asked, my voice cracking with the question I'd been avoiding asking. "How long has it been going on?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped back, her hands trembling. I could see the guilt written all over her face, but she wasn't ready to confess. "Not yet. I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally said, her voice shaky. It started with work, and then one thing led to another and—" I didn't let her finish. "One thing led to another?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've been lying to me for months, Emily. You've been sleeping with him behind my back. And all this time, I thought we were fine." She took a step toward me, her voice pleading. "Please, just listen." "No." I cut her off, the anger rising in my chest. "You listen to me. I've been nothing but faithful to you, and you—" I paused, trying to contain myself, but the words just kept spilling out. "You've been cheating on me with your boss. You've been pretending like nothing's wrong, and I've been too blind to see it." She stared at me, her eyes filled with a mix of shame and fear. "I'm sorry," she said, almost too softly to hear. "I didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head. "Sorry? You've been sleeping with him, lying to me for months, and now you want to apologize? It's too late for that." I could see the guilt in her face, but it didn't change anything. It didn't take away the hurt, the anger, the betrayal. In that moment, I realized just how deep her lies had gone. This wasn't just a small mistake. She had been living a double life. And I had been too trusting, too blind to see it. I could feel the tension in the room growing thicker. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I knew I needed to stay in control. I had to get the answers I needed. You think it's over now, don't you? I asked. You think that just because you're confessing, it makes everything okay. But it doesn't. You've betrayed me, Emily. You've torn apart everything we built. She shook her head. I never meant for it to get this far. I don't care, I snapped. You did. And now I need to know, how long has this been going on? How many times? She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. It's been a few months. A few months, I repeated, the weight of her words hitting me like a ton of bricks. You've been cheating on me for months, and I never knew. I had no idea. I turned away from her, unable to look at her anymore. The pain was too much. The betrayal was too much. The next morning, when she was still asleep, I packed a few things. I couldn't stay in that house anymore, not with her. Not after everything she had done. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get out. I was done. I woke up the next morning to an empty house. Emily had already left for work, and the silence in the air was unbearable. It felt like the whole house was suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the coffee cup in front of me, but I couldn't bring myself to drink it. I hadn't felt so lost in a long time, and I didn't know what to do next. The night before had been a whirlwind. Emily's confession, the way she'd broken down in front of me, apologizing over and over, like that would somehow make up for what she had done. But I wasn't fooled. There was no apology that could take back the months of betrayal, the lies she had spun so easily while I had been completely blind to it all. I ran my hands over my face, trying to collect my thoughts. What did I do now? Should I stay? Should I leave? I wasn't even sure I wanted her anymore, not after everything. But I had invested so much time into this marriage, into the woman I had thought was my partner. I couldn't stay though. Not when everything about her had turned out to be a lie. I grabbed my phone and texted Paul, asking if he could meet up. I needed to talk to him, get a second opinion, if nothing else. I couldn't handle this alone. I needed someone who wasn't emotionally attached to all of this. He responded almost immediately. I'll be there in an hour. I left the house shortly after, not sure what I was hoping to accomplish. I was a shell of the man I used to be, walking through life like a ghost. Every place I looked reminded me of Emily, reminded me of the life we had shared. The places she had been with Jack, the places she had touched him. The thought of it made my stomach churn. When I met Paul at the local diner, he immediately looked me up and down, sensing the heaviness in the air. We sat in a booth in the back corner, away from the noise of the rest of the restaurant. Paul had always been a bit of a joker, but today, there was no humor in his eyes. He knew what had happened, and he didn't need to say it. How are you holding up, man? He asked, his voice soft. I shrugged, unable to give him a real answer. I don't even know anymore. Paul nodded, leaning in. Look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this for you. You've been through hell, and I'm sorry. But you need to think about what you want next. You can't stay in this marriage if she's still seeing him. You deserve better. His words hit me harder than I expected. The reality of it all sunk in deeper. I didn't want to hear it, but I needed to. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of uncertainty. I had to face the truth. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can move on from this. She was my wife, Paul. I trusted her. How do you get past something like this? Paul leaned back, his hands clasped in front of him. You don't. Not completely. But you have to decide if you're willing to keep living with the lie. If you can't forgive her, if you can't move past this, then maybe it's time to let go. I felt the weight of his words settle in my chest. I don't think I can. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. It's not just the cheating, it's everything. She lied to me every day, made me believe she was the woman I married when she wasn't. And now, Now I have to figure out how to get back to myself. Paul didn't say anything for a moment, just watched me, probably weighing his words carefully. I know this hurts, man. But you can't let her ruin your life. You're better than that. And if you want to get out of this mess, you've got to start somewhere. First, you need to take care of yourself. I nodded, the tears threatening to come, but I refused to let them fall. I thought I knew her. I thought we had a future together. You did. But people change. She changed. And just like that, the floodgates opened. Not from the words Paul had spoken, but from the realization that everything I had believed in was now gone. Emily had been my world for so long, and now it was all a lie. The pain of it was almost unbearable. But I couldn't let myself drown in it. The days that followed were a blur. I didn't stay at the house. I couldn't. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of her, of the life we had once shared, of the way I had thought things were. The truth was like a weight, pressing down on me. I felt like I was drowning in it, struggling to breathe under the realization that my marriage, my entire world, had been a lie. I stayed with Paul for a few days. He didn't ask many questions, just let me be. We drank beer, watched TV, and talked about anything but Emily. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep my mind from completely unraveling. I knew I had to go back eventually, but the thought of facing her again made my stomach turn. And then, that night, I got the text. It was from Emily. Her message was simple. We need to talk. I stared at it for what felt like hours. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. I knew what she would say, knew that she would try to explain herself again. But what good would that do? What could she possibly say that would make any of this better? The truth was out there. I had seen it with my own eyes, and nothing she could say would ever change that. But I had to face her. I couldn't keep running. I went back to the house, not sure what I was walking into. Emily was there, sitting on the couch when I walked in. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She stood up when she saw me, but didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, her expression full of regret. "How are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer right away. I didn't know how to. What was I supposed to say? How was I supposed to act? Everything I had known, everything I had believed, was shattered. "I'm done, Emily," I said, my voice steady. "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending like everything's okay. You've betrayed me, and I can't forget that." Her face crumpled, and she took a step toward me. "Please, just let me explain." "No," I interrupted. "There's nothing left to explain. You've been lying to me for months. You've been sleeping with Jack, and you didn't even care about the damage it would do to us. You don't get to explain your way out of this." She stood there, silent for a long time. I could see the tears starting to form, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. All I felt was the cold emptiness of betrayal. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to go this far. It just happened." I shook my head. "No, Emily. This didn't just happen. You made choices. You chose him. Over and over again. And now I'm standing here, trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of my life after everything you've done." Her lips trembled as she took a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stop." "I don't care," I said, the words feeling hollow in my chest. "You had a choice. And now it's over." There was a long pause before I spoke again, my voice quieter, but more final this time. "I can't be with someone who doesn't respect me, Emily. I can't live a life with someone who hides things from me. I need to move on." She didn't say anything more. She didn't try to stop me or beg me to stay. There was nothing left to say. She knew I had made up my mind, just like I knew she had made hers. I packed up the last of my things that night. I didn't even look at her as I left the house. It wasn't anger that drove me. It was something deeper, something I couldn't put into words. It was the realization that the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had never truly been the person I thought she was. She was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't want to know. The hardest part wasn't the divorce or the separation. It was the way I felt, completely lost in the aftermath. I didn't know who I was without her. I had built my life around her, and now I had to rebuild everything from the ground up. Paul was there for me, as always, but I knew that no one could fix this for me. I was the one who had to find my way through the wreckage. A few months later, I ran into Emily at a coffee shop. She looked different, more put together, her hair styled neatly, a look of quiet determination in her eyes. It was almost like she was trying to pretend everything was fine. We exchanged a few words, nothing more than polite small talk, before I walked away. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel betrayal. All I felt was a cold, detached sense of finality. She was a chapter in my life that was over, and no amount of words could change that. But just before I left, I turned back. She was standing there, looking at me with that same sad expression. Without saying anything, she stepped forward, just a bit. For a brief moment, it felt like nothing had changed. She looked at me, and I looked at her. There was an unspoken understanding between us. No words. Just a shared history of what once was. And then, for reasons I couldn't explain, she reached out. Her hands were gentle, and without saying a word, she pulled me into a kiss. It wasn't fiery or passionate. It wasn't even angry. It was quiet, almost mournful. A goodbye. We parted ways, and I knew then that it was truly the end. I had moved on. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But I had done it. And that was the hardest, but most necessary, thing I had ever done.